You are being quietly slaughtered without spilling a single drop of blood. The modern world is perfectly engineered to sedate you into a comfortable ruin. To survive this invisible war, you must master a 2,800-year-old blood-stained secret of ruthless deception, and the final strike will absolutely terrify you. Look around you. In this relentless, chaotic world, where economic tectonic plates shatter, invisible plagues sweep across nations, and technology mutates faster than our fragile brains can comprehend, the razor-thin boundary between life and absolute ruin is terrifyingly fragile. When you are shoved to the very edge of the abyss, when your resources are drained to the last drop and every familiar path crumbles beneath your feet, what dictates whether you claw your way back to the light or sink forever into the agonizing silence of failure? Society has indoctrinated us to worship raw power, overflowing bank accounts, and the illusion of external salvation. But the darkest, most profound depths of evolutionary psychology and human history whisper a chillingly different truth. The answer to your survival is not a modern invention. It is a blood-stained secret buried 2,800 years in the past. Myth. Eryndor warmly welcomes you to this sanctuary of thought, where we strip away the illusions of reality. If you find yourself hungry for the raw, unfiltered truths that can arm your mind against the relentless storms of life, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel and give us the fire to bring you even more profound revelations in the future. Now let us step back into the violent, unforgiving world of the ancient poet Homer, seeking answers not from divine miracles but from a man forged of flesh, blood, and unyielding intellect. When we hear of Greek epics, our minds immediately conjure the image of Achilles, the absolute pinnacle of physical dominance, war, and blindingly radiant yet pathetically short-lived glory. Achilles chose a magnificent life, but a premature death. A choice that perfectly embodies the impulsive arrogance and blinding ego of modern man. But in today's complex, treacherous reality, we do not need another Achilles to charge blindly into the slaughterhouse. We desperately need Odysseus. Odysseus was never the strongest man in the room. He held no divine immortality, nor did he possess the brute force to obliterate armies with a single swing. Yet he is history's ultimate survivor. He is the living embodiment of Métis, the dark, calculating intellect, the ruthless cunning, the supreme adaptability, and the desperate human will to overcome. His agonizing 10-year voyage adrift on a merciless sea is not some whimsical bedtime story meant to entertain children. Viewed through the brutal lens of our modern era, the Odyssey is the most massive, razor-sharp psychological manifesto on the art of survival ever conceived. It surgically dissects the roots of temptation, the agony of discipline, the rot of the ego, and the exact methods modern humans must use to navigate the tempests of their own lives. We are living in an era where monsters no longer take the shape of one-eyed giants or seductive witches who turn men into swine. Our monsters are far more lethal. They are the suffocating grip of procrastination, the psychological traps of social media algorithms designed to steal your life force, the slow decay of mental burnout, disastrous corporate miscalculations, and the corruption of our own souls in the face of power and lust. The trials of Odysseus have never been more terrifyingly relevant. What he faced on the ancient Mediterranean is precisely what you face in your boardrooms, your relationships, and the silent echoing chambers of your own mind. Today we will not read this epic like naive children. We are going to vivisect the journey of Odysseus to extract the greatest survival formula ever known. How do you preserve your sanity and strike back when the entire universe is conspiring to swallow you whole? But before the universe can violently crush you from the outside, it will first attempt to quietly rot you from the inside out. The first true test of survival does not arrive with the deafening roar of a battlefield, but in the terrifying silence of absolute comfort. When Odysseus and his battered crew landed on the shores of the Lotus Eaters, they were not met with spears or monstrous fangs. They were offered a sweet, intoxicating fruit. The men who ate the lotus did not die a bloody death. They suffered a fate infinitely worse. They simply forgot their way home. They lost their ambition, their pain, their drive, and their very purpose, dissolving into a state of hollow, perpetual bliss. Look at the modern world. Are we not surrounded by fields of lotus? We are drowning in an ocean of cheap dopamine, endless scrolling, streaming algorithms, and synthetic pleasures engineered in Silicon Valley to hijack the primal reward centers of our brains. Every time you surrender hours to meaningless digital consumption, every time you choose the numbing comfort of distraction over the agonizing friction of doing the work, you are gorging on the lotus. It is a slow, painless suicide of your potential. Society wants you sedated, pacified, and easily manipulated. A numb mind does not question. A comfortable soul does not fight back. Odysseus did not reason with his intoxicated men. He dragged them back to the ships weeping and screaming and physically bound them to the rowing benches. He understood a brutal psychological truth. You cannot negotiate with addiction. You must violently sever the cord. In your own life, you must become your own ruthless commander. You must recognize the sweet poisons that are stealing your life force, the toxic relationships that drain you, the habits that pacify your anger, the digital escapes that blind you to your reality. Escaping the modern lotus eaters requires the terrifying willingness to drag your own screaming ego away from comfort and chain it back to the agonizing oars of your purpose. Waking from that seductive stupor is only the first trial. The next requires a brutal sacrifice of your own identity. Sooner or later, you will find yourself trapped in a cave with a monster you cannot overpower. For Odysseus, this was Polyphemus, the towering, flesh-eating Cyclops, who shattered the skulls of his men like fragile pottery. If Odysseus had channeled the arrogant spirit of Achilles, he would have drawn his sword, roared his name, and charged the beast, a heroic, suicidal gesture that would have ended in him being devoured. But here is where the ancient blueprint reveals its darkest genius. Odysseus suppressed his ego. He did not fight force with force. He fought absolute power with absolute deception. When the Cyclops asked for his name, Odysseus replied, "I am nobody." It is a chillingly brilliant psychological maneuver. By erasing his identity, he disarmed the giant's ability to summon help once the blinding stake was driven into its single eye. "Nobody is killing me," the blinded Cyclops screamed to his brethren, and so help never came. In the modern theater of corporate warfare, social climbing, and financial survival, we are constantly faced with giants, megacorporations, vindictive superiors, or entrenched systemic barriers. Our society screams at us to build our personal brands, to shout our names into the void, to constantly assert our importance. But the cunning survivor knows that ego is a glaring target painted on your back. There are moments when you must embrace the supreme power of being nobody. You must operate in the shadows, masking your true intentions, swallowing your pride, and letting the giants underestimate you. When you are outmatched, outfunded, and outgunned, your silence is your shield, and your unpredictability is your spear. It takes a terrifying amount of internal strength to willingly shrink yourself in the eyes of a monster, to smile through the humiliation of being overlooked, all while quietly sharpening the stake in the dark. The giants of this world are blinded by their own colossal arrogance. They look only for other giants. They never see the silent, calculating nobody until the blade is already in their eye. Yet escaping the heavy, crushing foot of a giant means nothing if you willingly sail into the arms of a beautiful madness. The sea of life is teeming with haunting melodies, and no tale captures the agony of human desire quite like the Sirens. These were creatures whose song was so overwhelmingly beautiful, so perfectly attuned to the deepest, most desperate cravings of a man's heart, that sailors would willingly steer their ships into jagged rocks just to hear it. They represent the ultimate destructive allure of our darkest vices, be it the ravenous pursuit of wealth, the intoxication of illicit power, or the destructive spiral of lust. Odysseus knew his own human frailty. He knew he was not a god immune to temptation. So what did he do? He ordered his men to plug their ears with beeswax, deafening them to the world, while he had himself physically lashed to the mast of the ship with strict orders not to untie him, no matter how violently he begged. As they passed the deadly island, he heard the song. He screamed, he thrashed, he threatened to kill his men if they didn't release him, utterly possessed by the madness of desire. But the ropes held fast. He survived because he relied on a system of restraint, built in a moment of clarity, rather than trusting his willpower in a moment of temptation. This is the ultimate masterclass in human psychology. We arrogantly believe we can outsmart our own biological urges. We believe we can dabble in corruption, flirt with toxic investments, or casually entertain destructive relationships without being pulled into the abyss. But willpower is a fragile, finite resource that shatters under the weight of true temptation. If you want to survive the sirens of the modern world, you must build your own mast and forge your own ropes while your mind is still clear. You must engineer your environment so that failure becomes impossible. Cut up the credit cards, block the toxic numbers, isolate yourself from the environments that trigger your darkest impulses. You must accept that you are a flawed, vulnerable creature capable of catastrophic self-destruction, and bind yourself so tightly to your core values that when the madness inevitably takes hold, your environment holds you in place while you scream. But survival is not merely about enduring the torment of the sea. It is about reclaiming what is rightfully yours when you finally reach the shore. After 10 years of war and 10 years of agonizing torment at sea, Odysseus finally touches the soil of Ithaca. But his home is no longer his own. It has been overrun by a parasitic swarm of suitors who are devouring his wealth, plotting to murder his son, and attempting to claim his wife. The natural burning instinct of any man would be to storm the gates, screaming for vengeance, driven blind by the rage of 20 stolen years. But Odysseus is the architect of Metis. He knows that a premature strike is a death sentence. And so the great king of Ithaca does the unthinkable. He disguises himself as an old withered beggar. He walks into his own magnificent halls and allows himself to be mocked, physically beaten, and humiliated by lesser men. He eats the scraps thrown at him like a dog. Can you fathom the sheer glacial coldness of that patience, to possess the capability to kill, yet to sit in the dirt and watch the rot infesting your life, cataloging every enemy, studying every weakness, waiting for the perfect, inescapable alignment of fate? We are often desperate for immediate vindication. When we are wronged, when a business partner betrays us, when we are pushed to the absolute edge of financial or emotional ruin, we want to react instantly. We let our anger dictate our actions, tipping our hand and allowing our enemies to brace for impact. But the path of the survivor demands the psychological endurance to wear the mask of the beggar. Sometimes to win the war, you must allow your enemies to believe they have completely broken you. You must let them feast on their own arrogance, letting their guard drop as they celebrate a false victory. Odysseus waited until the doors of the great hall were locked, until the weapons of the suitors were secretly removed, and only then did he string his great bow. The final strike was not a chaotic brawl, it was a methodical, inescapable slaughter. This is the ultimate lesson of the ancient blueprint. Endure the humiliation, protect your sanity, through the blinding storms of temptation and ego. Accumulate your knowledge in the shadows, and when the time comes to reclaim your life from the forces that sought to destroy you, do not strike with blind rage. Strike with a cold, terrifying precision from which there is absolutely no escape. The epic journey of Odysseus is far more than a myth of ancient gods and monsters. It is a timeless, brutal psychological blueprint for surviving the relentless hostility of the world. To navigate the modern landscape, you must first recognize that destruction often disguises itself as comfort. Escaping the Lotus Eaters requires a violent rejection of sedation and cheap dopamine. Once awake, survival demands the tactical suppression of your ego. In a world obsessed with loud self-promotion, adopting the persona of nobody allows you to move invisibly, disarming giants and striking only when they are blinded by their own colossal arrogance. Yet intellect alone cannot save you from the primal urges of human frailty. Like steering past the Sirens, you must construct unyielding systems of discipline, tying yourself to the mast of your core values before temptation shatters your willpower. Finally, when the time comes to reclaim your life from the forces that have wronged you, you must master the glacial patience of the beggar. Endure the temporary humiliations, study your adversaries in the shadows, and wait for the perfect alignment of circumstances. True victory is never born of erratic emotional rage. It is the result of calculated endurance. Ultimately, to conquer the modern world, you must become your own ruthless commander, willing to sacrifice comfort, superficial identity, and immediate gratification to secure a triumphant, inescapable return to your ultimate purpose. The profound lesson: true power does not stem from brute force or outward aggression. It is born from the absolute mastery of oneself. The ultimate battleground is not the external world, but your own mind. Your capacity to conquer is entirely dependent on your ability to outsmart your own biology, suppress your ego, and detach from the emotional impulses of anger, pride, and desire. Application to modern life. Apply this ancient blueprint by auditing your daily environment. First, sever the cords of passive consumption, delete the apps, and remove the distractions that feed you the lotus of cheap dopamine. Second, when facing systemic giants, corporate rivals, or loud competitors, stop broadcasting your moves. Cultivate the power of being nobody by working in absolute silence. Third, stop trusting your willpower. If you want to break a toxic habit, engineer your physical and digital environment so that failure is impossible. Lash yourself to the mast by blocking websites, cutting up credit cards, or isolating yourself from toxic circles. Finally, when you are wronged or set back, swallow the urge for immediate retaliation or angry outbursts. Play the long game. Wear the mask of the beggar. Gather your resources in silence and execute your plans only when your success is an absolute certainty. Which of these four ancient trials, the comfort of the lotus, the ego of the cyclops, the temptation of the sirens, or the patience of the beggar, do you struggle with the most in your current life? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below so we can all learn from each other's perspectives. If you found value in this, please subscribe to the channel to support our work and give us the motivation to keep creating more powerful content for you.